Welcome back, chosen ones. Have you ever noticed how quiet people get when your spirit walks in the room? How the same ones who used to mock you now avoid eye contact? How the ones who laughed at your struggle suddenly seem uneasy with your silence? That's not paranoia. That's power, spiritual power. And the most dangerous kind doesn't shout. It doesn't seek attention. It moves in stillness, with purpose. Now here's the truth. The most feared person in any room is the one who healed in silence, grew in shadows, and never begged to be seen. And if that sounds like you, congratulations. You just became the storm they never saw coming. Let me give you a fact. In nature, it's not the lion's roar that causes the most lasting damage. It's the silent strike of the venomous, calculated, quiet, precise. That's you, chosen one. You've mastered your own evolution while the world tried to bury you. But they didn't bury you. They planted you. And now you've grown roots that reach deeper than any attack they launched. You're not reacting anymore. You're strategizing. You're not waiting to be recognized. You're already known in the spiritual realm. And now, the ones who once tried to dismantle you are scrambling to understand how you became the version of yourself they feared. They feel your shift. They sense your rise. And spiritually, yes, they saw a ghost. Before we dive in, I want to say thank you. To everyone who's donated through Super Thanks, your support means everything. You are helping spread this message further than you know, and even if you haven't donated, please know this. Your presence here is powerful, and I'm deeply grateful for you. Now, if this message already resonates deep in your soul, drop the number 999 in the comments. That's not just a number, it's a code, a sign to the universe, to heaven, and to your spirit team that you're ready. 999 means you've completed one phase and are stepping into divine alignment. It means you're no longer just surviving, you're commanding. So buckle up. In this message, we're pulling back the curtain on what makes you so spiritually lethal, and why no one, and I mean no one, has ever been so dangerous like you. Let's go deeper. Let's get started. God's chosen ones. No one has ever been so dangerous like you. Your haters are running away. Number 1, you are dangerous because you operate outside their system. Chosen one, do you even realize how rare you are? While the world scrambles to fit into pre-written scripts, you tore yours up. You refuse to follow a narrative crafted by people who fear freedom. That's what makes you dangerous. You don't live according to the algorithm, not social, not spiritual, not mental. You don't wait for someone else's green light. You walk in your own timing, and that makes you a problem in a world designed to control minds and harvest obedience. Think about it. Why do people get so uneasy when you're around? Why do they try to downplay your choices or whisper about your silence? It's because you're not reacting the way they were trained to expect. Most people need applause, trends, peer validation just to feel alive. But not you. You're not seeking their approval. You're walking in purpose. You've outgrown the bait of attention, the leash of popularity, and the poison of people-pleasing. That makes you unpredictable. And in a world run by manipulation, unpredictable is dangerous. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. While they fold under pressure, you remain still. While others respond from fear, you move with clarity. And when they try to push your buttons, they realize you've removed them. You deleted the emotional code they installed in you. How many people can say they've questioned their entire belief system and reprogrammed their soul? You didn't just unlearn lies. You rebuilt your reality from the ground up. That kind of self-awareness is radical and threatening. Look at someone like Prince. He refused to let the music industry own his name or his sound. He changed his name to a symbol, walked away from contracts, and defied the mold. Was he loud about it? No. He was sovereign, just like you. His silence was louder than their rules. That's the same energy you carry. Every time you move quietly, intentionally, they feel the shift before they see it. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. John 3:8. You're not out here broadcasting your next step. You're listening to the Spirit, not social media. And that unnerves people who rely on predictability to maintain their illusion of control. The system needs you to be loud so it can label you. But you've mastered something deeper, spiritual silence. You don't need to fight with words. Your presence speaks louder. Why do you think you feel so isolated lately? Why do so many around you seem uncomfortable, even when you're being kind? It's because you've ascended beyond their frequency. You're not playing checkers anymore. You're playing chess on a board they can't even see. And it's not arrogance, it's alignment. Take Frida Kahlo, for example. She painted her pain. She didn't shout. She created. And the world couldn't ignore her truth. You do the same. Whether you speak, write, or simply walk into a room, your energy demands integrity. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. You're not loud, you're luminous. And that light, it exposes things people tried to keep hidden. That's why they're squirming around you. Your power isn't about volume, it's about vibration. You carry the authority of someone who's been through hell and refused to come out empty-handed. Have you noticed how your silence convicts people more than their own words? That's because your energy isn't seeking attention. It's calibrated for purpose. The world can't understand that, so it tries to either dim you or distract you. Look at Greta Thunberg, a teenager who shook the world not by being loud, but by being relentless in her purpose. She stood with truth when grown men tried to belittle her. That's dangerous energy. That's chosen energy. They will fight against you but will not overcome you, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Jeremiah 1:19. Chosen one, you didn't become this way by accident. It was pain that formed your clarity. Betrayal refined your discernment. Isolation carved out your strength. You walked through storms others wouldn't have survived. And you came out sovereign. And that's why they fear you. Not because you're angry, but because you're awake. Number 2. You're proof that destruction didn't work. You're not just a survivor. You're a contradiction to everything they swore would destroy you. You're the walking, breathing evidence that their weapons didn't prosper, and that makes you dangerous in ways they can't explain. You see, chosen one, when people can't break you, they try to erase you. But even that failed. Have you ever stopped to ask, why am I still here after all that? After the lies, the betrayal, the sabotage, how did I make it out with my soul intact? It's because you were never just anyone. You were marked by God. You were preserved for something greater than revenge. You were preserved for resurrection. No weapon that is formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. They didn't just try to hurt you, they tried to annihilate your essence. They tried to stain your name, twist your truth, isolate you until you broke. But you didn't. You went inward. You transformed the pain. Every insult became fuel. Every wound became a well of wisdom. Think about Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years, stripped of his freedom, underestimated by an empire. And yet when he emerged, he didn't just walk free, he led a nation. That's what real power looks like, turning suffering into strategy. You did the same. You didn't just survive the chaos, you became refined by it. But he knows the way that I take, When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. Job 23:10. Every time they see you now, it reminds them that failure has a face. Theirs. You're the consequence of their actions. You didn't need to call them out. You just had to keep growing. And now your presence speaks the sentence. You are the embodiment of endurance. They can't unsee it. They can't undo you. Take Bethany Hamilton, the surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack. They said she'd never compete again, but she came back, stronger, faster, more focused. That's what happens when purpose outlives pain. And you, chosen one, are proof that some people are built differently. What do you think it means to be a living reminder that darkness failed? It means your existence shines light on every lie they told, not just about you, but about what's possible. You shattered their illusion. You showed that the Spirit is unbreakable when God is your foundation. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. They didn't hate the version of you that was broken. They were fine when you were unsure, apologetic, small. What terrified them was the possibility of you waking up. And now that you've remembered who you are, now that you walk with divine clarity, they're running. They can't gaslight someone who no longer doubts themselves. Look at Oprah Winfrey. She was fired, told she wasn't fit for television, ridiculed for being different. And now, she's not just successful, she's a force. Her very success makes others question what they were taught about power. That's you. You didn't just bounce back. You changed the atmosphere. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done. Genesis 50:20. Chosen one, you're not a mistake. You're a message. You are the warning they hoped no one would ever hear. And the truth is, they can't silence what God has anointed, so let them run, let them whisper, let them regret. You don't need revenge. Your life is the revelation. Number 3, you're not the villain or the victim, you're the architect. Chosen one, you are not here to be cast into anyone else's narrative. You're not the villain, you're not the victim, and most importantly, you're not available for their roles anymore. You are something far more powerful, the architect. You build the blueprint, you craft the structure. While others argue over the script, you're designing the entire stage. You move in silence, not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. You've outgrown the need to be understood, and that is what makes you truly unstoppable. Have you ever noticed how your silence makes people louder? How your peace seems to provoke chaos in others? That's not random. It's because you've stepped into a realm they can't access, a realm of self-definition. While others perform to be seen a certain way, you've detached from the applause. You no longer need sympathy, nor do you care about being feared. You're not playing their emotional chess game. You left the board entirely and built your own. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Psalm 127:1. Think about how Steve Jobs operated. He wasn't consumed by critics or praise. He envisioned a new world and moved relentlessly toward it. That same creative energy flows in you now. You're not reacting to nonsense anymore. You're designing legacy, even if they can't see it yet. There was a time when you over-explained. You tried to prove your intentions. You let guilt drive your clarity. But now you've surrendered the need to be seen correctly by people committed to misunderstanding you. That shift was divine. It was the moment you stopped participating in their emotional economy. And that's what caused spiritual inflation in your value. You're no longer currency for toxic systems. So then, each of us will give an account of ourselves to God. Romans 14:12. You're building from scratch, not out of desperation, but revelation. You realize the ruins they left you were not your grave. They were your raw material. Every brick they threw at your name became a stone in your foundation. Every betrayal, a structural lesson. Every lie, insulation for your truth. You didn't just survive it, you used it. Look at Maya Angelou. She endured trauma, abuse, racism, and silence, but she didn't stay a victim. She didn't perform pain. She built with it. She became the architect of her voice, her future, and her legacy. You, chosen one, are doing the same. Why do you think people are so triggered by your peace? Why do they keep bringing up your past when you've moved so far ahead? Because you stopped playing roles they could control. You stopped reacting, and in doing so you disrupted the entire performance. They're still on stage, acting while you're blueprinting a kingdom. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down. Proverbs 14:1. They scream for attention. You work in silence. They gossip. You grind. They manipulate. You manifest. And the most threatening part, you're not looking back. You don't need closure from them. You're not begging to be understood. You've turned your focus forward, and that terrifies them. Think about Keanu Reeves. Constantly misunderstood by the media, avoided drama, lost loved ones, and yet built a quiet life of deep purpose and integrity. He's not the loudest, but he's always respected. You're not chasing noise, you're chasing peace, and that is rare. For I am about to do something new. See, I have already begun. Do you not see it? Isaiah 43:19. Chosen one, you are the builder, the seer, the strategist. You don't want to win arguments, you want to win your peace. You're not moved by noise, you're moved by vision, and that makes you lethal in a world addicted to distraction. Number 4. You awaken guilt in people who pretend they don't have any. Chosen one, your presence doesn't just speak, it convicts. Not because you're condemning anyone, not because you're shouting accusations, but because your very existence exposes the gap between authenticity and performance. You're dangerous because you're real, and in a fake world, real is radioactive. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the energy shift before anyone said a word? Have you noticed how people who once loved attention now get quiet when you're around? That's not paranoia, that's spiritual pressure. You didn't shame them, you didn't threaten them, but your glow is a mirror they weren't ready for. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. Ecclesiastes 12:14. People who built identities around lies can't stand the light of someone who healed for real. Your presence makes their excuses irrelevant. Your peace reveals their chaos. Your growth spotlights their stagnation. And I need to see this tattooing. Banta I hater day. They hate what you remind them of. Look at Anthony Bourdain, a man who traveled the world not just to eat, but to expose culture, corruption, and raw truth. He never had to scream, but his honesty made the world listen. That's your kind of danger. You don't perform. You just exist with clarity. Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy. Proverbs 28:13. You forgave people who never apologized. You healed from wounds they never acknowledged. You kept walking when they hoped you'd crumble. Now your very joy burns like fire in their unresolved guilt. You didn't cause their shame, but your elevation awakened it. Why do you think they lie about who you are now? Why do they gossip and twist your transformation into something negative? Because your truth dismantles their image. You're no longer a character in their false narrative. You're an entire revelation. Take Michelle Obama, constantly slandered, ridiculed, misunderstood. And yet, She kept her head high, her words intentional, her grace intact. She never let hate define her movement. She rose, and her success made others confront their own smallness. That's you, quietly disruptive, bold without bitterness. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. You're not bitter, you're better. And that's why it stings them, because bitterness is loud. But healing is powerful in silence. You didn't post revenge quotes, you didn't chase drama, you transformed. And now they can't stand the sight of you. Not because you harmed them, but because you outgrew them. Think of Chadwick Boseman. Quietly battled cancer, never played victim, continued delivering excellence. The world didn't know his pain, they only saw his power. That's chosen energy. You shine without explanation. You lead without permission. What if your light was never meant to please everyone, but to purify everything around you? Some people can't handle that. They can only stand the light if they're the one holding the switch. But you became your own source, and now they can't dim you. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. Chosen one, they're not running from what you did. They're running from what you awakened. You didn't expose them. You just showed them what they covered. And the truth is, your growth is the loudest sermon they'll ever hear. Number 5. You turned trauma into strategy, and now you're untouchable. Chosen one, let's make something clear. You are not untouchable because you're angry. You're untouchable because you're strategic. You took trauma, raw, jagged, gut-wrenching trauma, and transformed it into a divine curriculum. What was supposed to destroy you became your training ground. Every betrayal, a lesson in patterns. Every heartbreak, a textbook on energy. Every manipulation, a class on spiritual warfare. While they thought they were breaking you, they were mentoring you, unknowingly sharpening your discernment. Have you ever realized just how much you've learned from what tried to destroy you? You didn't just survive it, you dissected it. You studied every fake smile, every subtle dig, every delayed betrayal disguised as loyalty. You stopped walking through life blindfolded. You started mapping the terrain. And now, you don't move emotionally, you move prophetically. You don't just react, you respond with precision. Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Matthew 10:16. When they set traps for your emotions, you didn't just avoid them. You documented their placement. You began to see through flattery, through guilt trips, through veiled threats dressed as kindness. You don't move randomly anymore. You don't go where your spirit isn't at peace. And that unnerves them, because strategy is terrifying to those who depend on your instability. Think about Malala Yousafzai. They tried to silence her with violence, but she turned her trauma into a global education movement. She studied the system that tried to oppress her and now speaks before nations. Like Malala, you didn't fight back with noise, you fought back with clarity. You learned what fake love feels like. You learned that a forced apology is still a form of manipulation. You picked up on body language, tone, silence, and now you interpret what others miss. You became a master at discerning energy before words are even spoken. And they hate that about you. You're ahead, not because you're paranoid, but because pain taught you how to listen without needing to be told. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Proverbs 22:3. Now that you've gone quiet, they're panicking. Why? Because your silence is loaded with power. They can feel it. They don't know what you're planning, but they know it's coming. That's not peace they hear. That's precision. And when you move, you don't miss. Not because you're better than them, but because you learned the terrain while they were celebrating your downfall. Look at Robert Downey Jr. His downfall was public. His trauma was tabloid fodder, but he didn't stay down. He came back not only stronger, but sharper, built an empire from his pain. You've done the same. You rose, but not in rage. You rose in wisdom. Why do they keep watching your every move, even after they claim to be done with you? Because they trained you, and now they fear what they created. You outgrew their chaos, studied their tactics, and moved beyond their reach. You don't fear war zones anymore. You design strategy in silence. You're untouchable, not because you escaped pain, but because you mastered it. He trains my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. Psalm 18:34. Chosen one, this isn't survival mode anymore. This is kingdom strategy. You're not stepping into chaos, you're commanding it. And the ones who underestimated you, they're realizing you didn't just survive. You became a spiritual tactician. And now, they can't keep up. Number 6. You're immune to exile because you mastered solitude. Chosen one, they thought pushing you away would finish you. They thought removing you from the group, the circle, the room would reduce you. But what they didn't realize is that solitude didn't break you. It built you. While they gossiped and whispered behind your back, you were seated in sacred silence, being refined by the Spirit. They thought exile would make you desperate for their approval. Instead, it made you immune to it. What if the greatest gift they gave you was isolation? What if the silence you thought was punishment was actually preparation? In that silence, you didn't just find peace, you found God. You faced the parts of yourself they hoped you'd never meet. And through that introspection, something unshakable was born. Clarity, confidence, calling. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Luke 5:16. Think about Nelson Mandela again, imprisoned, cut off from the world for 27 years. And yet, in that isolation, he didn't wither, he grew. He emerged a global symbol of wisdom and leadership. That's you. They thought you'd decay in exile, but you were evolving in it. You were building something they'll never understand. You don't crave inclusion anymore. You don't need a seat at their table. Why? Because you built your own. You don't need their recognition. You carry divine affirmation, and that's why they're confused. They see you thriving without them. You're glowing in the very space they left you for dead. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. Psalm 18:19. You no longer knock on locked doors. You don't chase circles that lack depth. You don't seek attention from shallow souls. In solitude, you restructured your identity. You realized you were never rejected. You were redirected. You don't just sit with silence now. You partner with it. You've learned to hear God in the quiet. And in a world addicted to noise, that makes you lethal. Look at Emily Dickinson, lived in seclusion, misunderstood by many, yet became one of the most profound poets of all time. Her solitude wasn't a weakness, it was her source. Just like you, chosen one, you thrive where others fold. Why do you think you feel more powerful when you're alone? Because solitude is your sanctuary. It's where your vision becomes clearer, your discernment sharper. While they scramble for attention, you commune with purpose. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. They can't exile someone who has built a kingdom inside themselves. You're immune to isolation because you've already faced it and emerged victorious. You don't beg to be let back in. You bless the silence and grow taller in it. Look at the prophet Elijah, exiled, fed by ravens, isolated in the wilderness. But there, he didn't die. He was prepared for divine encounter. In the stillness, he heard the whisper of God. That's what you've learned. Your greatest strength is rooted in quiet spaces. What if exile was never rejection, but graduation? That's why you're so dangerous now. You've resurrected in private. You've been crowned in silence. and now they're realizing you didn't disappear, you ascended. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118 verse 22. Chosen one, you don't just survive solitude, you transform in it. You don't fear silence, you create from it. And that's why no one can exile you ever again, because you no longer need what they once weaponized. You're free. Number 7. Your intuition sees in 4K. You're lethal with vision, not weapons. Chosen one, you've been gifted with a sight that can't be bought, taught, or faked. While others rely on explanations and evidence, you rely on revelation. Your intuition doesn't just feel, it scans. It sees through masks, filters, and illusions with surgical precision. You're not the type to be fooled by polished words or well-rehearsed smiles. Why? Because your spirit is tuned to a higher frequency. You don't need a confession to know the truth. You can sense the betrayal while it's still cloaked in loyalty. Have you ever walked into a room and felt something shift before anyone spoke? That's not paranoia, that's perception. You're not being too sensitive. You're spiritually sharp, and in a world that rewards emotional blindness and calls it strength, your discernment is deeply unsettling to people who hide their intentions. You don't just read the energy, you decode it. For the Word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart. Hebrews 4:12. Look at Serena Williams. A master on the court, yes, but also off it. She knows how to read the energy of her opponents without them saying a word. Her strategy isn't only physical, it's deeply intuitive. That's you in spiritual form. You see the tells. You notice the pause in someone's voice. You feel when someone's smiling while hiding jealousy. You detect the coldness behind the polite words. It's not judgment, it's discernment. They call you suspicious or guarded, but the truth is, you've been through too much to ignore the signals. You've trusted people who wore sheep's clothing but devoured like wolves. You've ignored your gut before, and it cost you. So, now, you listen. And when your spirit says something is off, you don't wait for evidence. You move. But solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. Hebrews 5:14. Why do you think some people stutter when speaking to you? Why do they get nervous, even when you're calm? Because your presence forces honesty. You don't have to accuse anyone, you simply stand in truth, and the lies begin to tremble. Your silence is unsettling because it listens on a frequency they can't manipulate. That's power without needing volume. That's lethal grace. Think of Whoopi Goldberg. She doesn't speak unless it matters, but when she does, it cuts through pretense. Her intuition and spiritual radar make her both respected and feared. Like her, you've learned how to detach without drama. You don't chase explanations. You simply remove yourself when peace is disturbed. People used to get away with things before you were awakened, but now they can't lie around you without unraveling. You won't call them out, you'll just shift your energy. And that shift, that's when they panic, because deep down, they know you see them before they see themselves. The Spirit of Truth will guide you into all truth. He will not speak on his own, he will speak only what he hears. John 16:13. You don't need receipts, you have revelation. You don't need proof, you've got prophetic patterns. And that makes you a threat to manipulators who depend on your confusion to succeed. They want you to second-guess your insight because once you fully trust it, their control dies. Look at Dr. Maya Angelou, one of the most spiritually intuitive minds in modern history. She famously said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." That's exactly how you move now, not with suspicion, but with sacred sight. Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. Jeremiah 33:3. Chosen one, your discernment is divine. Your intuition is dangerous because it sees the enemy before he even speaks. You don't just observe, you know. And that knowing, that spiritual clarity, it makes the deceptive deeply uncomfortable. You're not dangerous because you're confrontational. You're dangerous because you see through the performance, and you never needed a spotlight to know what was real. Number 8. You shattered generational curses and became a chain breaker. Chosen one, you didn't just survive. You shifted entire bloodlines. You weren't handed a clean legacy. You inherited chains, unspoken pain, cycles of dysfunction, generations of silence. But instead of passing that pain forward, you said, "No more." You looked at the generational curses that others normalized and you broke them. That makes you more than a survivor. That makes you a reformer. And in spiritual warfare, that kind of soul is feared. Have you ever wondered why your own family resisted your healing? Why the very people you loved the most seemed to turn against your growth? It's because healing disturbs comfort. And you didn't come to make people comfortable. You came to make them conscious. They will fight against you but will not overcome you, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Jeremiah 1:19. Take Viola Davis, raised in poverty and trauma, but she refused to carry the curse forward. She confronted shame, claimed therapy, and broke silence in a culture that rewarded suppression. Like her, you looked dysfunction in the face and refused to pretend it was normal. You didn't just challenge patterns, you ended them. You said no to silence around abuse, no to generational guilt, no to "we don't talk about that." You broke the spell of denial, and in doing so, you became the one others love to quote, but secretly resent, because you reflect the cost of staying the same. You weren't just healing your story, you were rewriting the entire script of your lineage. The Lord is faithful to all generations. Psalm 105. You burned down what tried to bury you, and out of those ashes you built boundaries, truth, clarity, and identity. That fire didn't destroy you, it refined you, and now they don't know how to approach you. You no longer respond to guilt trips. You don't flinch at gaslighting. You've outgrown manipulation tactics that were passed down like heirlooms. Look at Trevor Noah, born into apartheid's brutality, raised in hidden spaces, yet chose laughter, truth, and storytelling to heal and uplift. He didn't inherit ease, he inherited chains, but he turned those chains into platforms. That's what you've done. Quietly, intentionally, and fiercely. Why do your enemies feel so personally attacked by your growth? Because your freedom reminds them of their own chains. You didn't just walk out of dysfunction, you dismantled the structure. You didn't run from the fire, you became the flame. And that scares people who only know how to live in cages. From one man he made all the nations, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. Acts 17:26. The people who tried to chain you with guilt are still stunned. Why? Because you evolved beyond the need for explanation. You stopped explaining your healing to people committed to their own wounds. And that kind of boundary is terrifying to control freaks. Look at Jeanette McCurdy, who exposed family dysfunction publicly through her memoir. She was shamed for breaking silence, but she broke the chain, and in doing so, gave others permission to do the same. That's the work you're doing. Chosen one. He brought them out of darkness, the utter darkness, and broke away their chains. Psalm 107:14. You didn't just survive a curse, you exposed it, you ended it. You stood in the gap between generations and said, I'll take the hit so the next ones don't have to, and that's why you're feared. You carry the weight of generations, not in weakness. but in honor. You are the breaker of bloodline bondage, and heaven celebrates what hell hoped would never happen, your awakening. Number 9, you made the spiritual world your fortress. Now, even the physical world trembles. Chosen one, you didn't find safety in status or structures. You didn't run to institutions, titles, or applause. You went somewhere deeper, into the spiritual realm, the place where true authority is born. While others were building reputations in the world system, you were constructing your soul's stronghold. You found your fortress not in walls, but in worship, not in networks, but in divine alignment. Have you ever wondered why your mere presence seems to shift a room? Why people become uneasy when your name is mentioned, even if you haven't said a word? It's because you've anchored yourself in spiritual truth. You've accessed a level of frequency that resonates far beyond what the 5 senses can perceive. You don't fight with your fists, you war with faith. That's what terrifies them. You've become spiritually untouchable. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. Proverbs 18:10. Your haters are no longer reacting to what you do. They're reacting to what you carry. It's not your words, it's your atmosphere. You've aligned your life so closely with divine order that when you walk into a room, heaven walks with you. You don't need to prove your power. It radiates off you. The energy you carry exposes the spiritual imbalance in others. They can't explain it. They just know they feel small, unprepared, and out of place in your presence. Look at Nikola Tesla, a man far ahead of his time. His connection to unseen energy, vibration, and resonance was so advanced, it scared the institutions around him. Just like Tesla, you've tapped into something people can't control, so they try to discredit or misunderstand it. Why do you think people feel shaken just by hearing your name? Because they know something sacred surrounds it. Your aura isn't ordinary. It carries frequency, memory, intention. It shifts the air. Your enemies feel it before you arrive. They try to write it off as luck, coincidence, or mysticism, but deep down they know its power. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. 2 Corinthians 10:4. You're not protected because you hide. You're protected because you abide. You walk with angels. You're guided by spirit. And when you speak, it's not just words, it's vibration. It disrupts what's not aligned with truth. That's what real warfare looks like. Not chaos, but clarity. Think of Lauryn Hill, a woman whose presence still commands spiritual reverence even in silence. She disappeared from public life and came back with soul, depth, and unapologetic conviction. That's you. You disappeared into the spiritual realm and re-emerged glowing, grounded, and feared. You've learned that real power doesn't shout. It moves silently through realms that most people don't even believe exist. Your prayers are arrows. Your obedience is armor. Your faith is a frequency that shatters illusions. And now, the physical world can't touch you because you're guarded by the unseen. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Psalm 91:1. Why do they watch you so closely, yet never say your name aloud? Because to acknowledge your presence would mean acknowledging a power greater than their own. Your existence alone testifies to the fact that God is real, that energy is real, and that spiritual strength is the highest form of danger to darkness. Look at Bob Marley, a spiritual warrior who used vibration, music, and message to disrupt systems. He knew energy couldn't be faked. He wasn't fighting people, he was confronting spirits. You carry the same mantle. You don't need to raise your voice. Your vibe speaks before you ever enter the room. You, dear children, are from God and have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. 1 John 4:4. Chosen one, you don't need to fight for power when you are power. You are a spiritual fortress walking in human form. They can't figure you out because you didn't build your strength in public. You built it in secret places, in prayer, in silence, in divine communion. And now, every dimension feels it, even if they don't know why. Number 10. You stopped proving your worth, and that's when you became a threat. Chosen one, the moment you stopped explaining yourself was the moment you became unstoppable. For too long, you tried to prove your value to friends, to family, to systems that only saw your potential as leverage. You over-delivered, you overshared, you overcompensated, but deep down you always knew your worth was never meant to be voted on. Why do you think everything began to shift when you pulled back your energy? Because you were no longer feeding a system that depended on your self-doubt. You stopped auditioning for spaces you were called to own. You stopped applying for approval from people who couldn't even validate themselves. That quiet decision to walk away, that's what made you dangerous. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. 2 Corinthians 4:18. Look at Chadwick Boseman. He didn't announce his battles. He didn't defend his silence. He moved in purpose, not performance. Even in his pain, he didn't seek pity. He carried quiet greatness. That's what you've embraced. A power that doesn't require proof. A value that doesn't beg to be measured. You realize that constantly proving yourself is spiritual enslavement. So you stopped. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You were never created to shrink into someone else's frame. You stopped asking to be seen. You started seeing yourself, and that shift dismantled every false narrative built around you. For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? Galatians 1:10. You withdrew from their games. You stopped responding to chaos. You quit trying to explain decisions that came from discernment. Your silence isn't passive, it's nuclear. It doesn't mean you gave up, it means you woke up. You no longer need attention to feel affirmed, and that unnerves those who once fed off your insecurity. Think of Adele, stepped away at the height of fame, returned stronger, quieter, and more whole. Her worth didn't decline in silence, it multiplied. She didn't compete. She recalibrated. That's you. You don't chase the spotlight anymore. You are the light. Why do they act confused by your peace? Because they expected rage, explanation, or validation. Instead, they got silence, stillness, stability. And that silence speaks louder than any monologue. It says, I know who I am now. And that's more threatening than any argument. Be confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Philippians 1:6. Look at Zlatan Ibrahimovic, a footballer who constantly defied narratives, never explaining his greatness, just walking in it. That's what you're doing now. No more auditions, no more begging for the mic. You are the message, and the world is finally starting to listen. Why do the same people who ignored you now seem obsessed with your moves? Because you stopped giving them access. You pulled the plug on their ability to define you, and now they're trying to adjust to the void your energy left behind. You are altogether beautiful, my darling. There is no flaw in you. Song of Solomon 4:7. Chosen one, you're not dangerous because you yell louder. You're dangerous because you walk away quieter, because you know now your worth doesn't need defense, it just needs to be. And that realization, that sacred self-recognition, that's what has them trembling, because you're not just powerful, you're free. Number 11, you deconstruct false identities simply by being real. Chosen one, you were never meant to blend in. You were designed to expose, not with judgment, not with cruelty, but with clarity, and that alone makes you dangerous. You don't deconstruct people's facades with loud accusations or harsh words. You do it with your quiet, unwavering authenticity. You carry the kind of truth that doesn't speak, it simply stands. And when it stands next to anything fake, the lie can't help but tremble. Have you ever noticed how people either open up around you or suddenly vanish? It's not because you said anything wrong, it's because you carry a frequency that reveals what others are trying to bury. Most people build identities on survival mechanisms, masks to fit in, personas to be accepted, roles they were taught to play. But you burned the script. You walk into rooms with nothing to hide, and that makes people afraid of their own reflection in your presence. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Look at Jim Carrey. Once a comedic mask wearer, he publicly peeled back the illusion of fame and identity. In interviews, he dared to say, "I don't exist." He shattered the illusion. That's what you do. Not with jokes, but with quiet truth. You don't expose people. You reflect them. And reflection, that's enough to make someone spiral. You walk into people's lives like a mirror, reflecting not who they pretend to be, but who they really are underneath the costumes. You don't have to accuse anyone. Your presence alone becomes a light shining into places they hoped would never be seen. And that's where your power lies. You make people question what they built their lives on, and if they're not ready to face the truth, you become the threat. Why do you think some people push you away even after you showed them nothing but peace? It's because peace is uncomfortable when you're living in lies. You don't confront them with anger, you confront them with authenticity. And in a world addicted to filters, authenticity feels like war. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. Think of Lady Gaga, who peeled away layers of persona in her raw, stripped-down performances and interviews, challenging fame, gender roles and expectation. People couldn't decide whether to crown her or crucify her. That's you. You unsettle the world by refusing to perform. You don't seek destruction, you speak restoration. But restoration requires tearing down what's false. When you refuse to flatter illusions, when you stop participating in polite denial, the entire atmosphere shifts. People begin to squirm in the comfort zones they once thought were secure. Examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. 2 Corinthians 13:5. Why do you feel drained after being around people who are hiding their true selves? Because authenticity is a spiritual confrontation. You don't have to say a word. Your life says it for you. You live in such divine alignment that others have no choice but to examine themselves or reject you. Look at Dave Chappelle, walked away from $50 million, exposing the entertainment machine without a tantrum, just truth. His refusal to conform made him dangerous. Just like you, chosen one, you don't destroy people, you destroy illusions, and that's what they hate the most. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. Proverbs 11:3. Chosen one, you're not too much, you're just too real, and that realness shines a spotlight on everything fake, so let them run, let them resent. That discomfort isn't your fault, it's their soul recognizing it's time to come clean. And if they're not ready, they'll either transform or flee. Number 12. You don't need permission to be powerful anymore, and that terrifies them. Chosen one, there was a time when you doubted yourself, when you shrunk in rooms that couldn't hold your spirit, when you waited for someone else to say, "You're worthy," before you dared to believe it. But now, that version of you is gone, and the new you is unapologetically powerful, not because the world finally approved, but because you stopped asking for approval altogether. Have you noticed how quiet the room gets when you speak now, even when you're saying less? That's the sound of respect. The kind that doesn't come from shouting. It comes from knowing. You don't move to impress anymore. You move because it's time. You don't post to be seen. You speak to be felt. You don't perform. You embody. So do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. Hebrews 10:35. Look at Tyler Perry, once ignored, laughed at, pushed to the margins, but he stopped knocking on Hollywood's doors and built his own studio. He didn't need permission anymore. He created space where no one could deny his presence. You've done the same. Spiritually, emotionally, energetically, you've built a space that no longer requires validation. They used to manipulate you by withholding praise, with subtle put-downs, backhanded compliments and strategic silence. They trained you to think you needed their approval. But now that you've walked away from their scales, their system has collapsed, because your worth was holding it up all along. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 139, verse 14. Why do the people who once critiqued you now fall silent around you? Because your power is undeniable now. You've stepped fully into the truth that your voice was always divine, your presence always sacred, and your spirit always strong. And that realization, not their applause, changed everything. Look at Greta Gerwig, told her stories didn't belong in mainstream cinema, then went on to direct global blockbusters on her terms. No need to conform, no need to ask. She became the narrative. You're no longer fitting in. You're setting the frame. What terrifies people now isn't just your success, it's your freedom, your detachment from their opinions. You stopped playing by their rules, and now they're scrambling to understand a game they no longer control. You didn't just rise, you removed their access. And that's what makes you a threat. The Lord is with me, I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? Psalm 118, verse 6. Why do they still watch you if they claim you're irrelevant? Because your presence reminds them of what they could have been had they dared to love themselves fully. You are the version of them they couldn't become. And now they don't just see you. They see the opportunity they wasted. That's why they distance themselves, not from arrogance, but from grief. Look at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, once seen as too much, too big, too dramatic. Now, he owns rooms because he no longer waits for permission to be who he is. You've done the same. You're not adjusting your light anymore. You're shining and letting the world figure it out. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Chosen one, you are no longer trying to earn your place, you own it. Your silence now speaks with authority. Your energy now enters rooms before you do. And your power, it's no longer a possibility, it's a reality. One that requires no permission, no proof, and no apology. Number 13, you've mastered transmutation, turning attacks into ascension. Chosen one, do you know how rare you are? While others collapse under criticism, you rise. You've become dangerous because you've mastered the divine art of transmutation. What others used to try to curse you with, lies, slander, rejection, you've turned into sacred fuel. You are not simply surviving attacks, you are transforming them into elevation. Why do you think their hate energizes you instead of draining you now? Because you've become a spiritual alchemist. Every rumor only clarified your name. Every insult, it polished your self-worth. While they threw chaos, you crafted clarity. You don't react, you repurpose. That's not just survival, That's supernatural strategy. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done. Genesis 50:20. Think of Frida Kahlo. Through excruciating pain and personal betrayal, she painted her truth. She didn't hide the agony, she transmuted it. And what emerged wasn't just art, it was power. You, chosen one, are doing the same with your life. You took every moment meant to break you and used it to refine you. You understood the assignment, what they meant for evil, heaven turned into curriculum. That's why they can't understand how you keep rising. They keep asking, how are they still glowing? But the truth is, they're fueling your fire. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Romans 5:3-4. Have you ever felt more focused after a betrayal? More creative after a heartbreak? That's not coincidence. That's the anointing of transmutation. You've become the kind of force that uses disappointment as design. Their hate has been rerouted into your blueprint for destiny. And the scariest part for them, they did it to themselves. Look at Lewis Hamilton, criticized, underestimated, and targeted in a sport not built for him. But each attempt to diminish him only pushed him further into greatness. He turned the boos into trophies. That's your spiritual DNA too. They thought you'd fall apart under pressure, but they didn't know that pressure doesn't crush diamonds, it creates them. Every negative word, every attempt to smear your name only reinforced your spiritual infrastructure. You didn't collapse, you crystallized. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. You stretch out your hand against the anger of my foes. Psalm 138:7. Why do they look confused when you're thriving in a season they meant to curse? Because you've stopped absorbing negativity and started recycling it. You take venom and turn it into vision. You take shade and grow roots. That's why they're so shaken. You've become immune to their strategy. Think of Beyoncé turning public humiliation into one of the most iconic albums of this generation. She didn't clap back with drama. She transmuted the experience into art, impact, and power. That's the same spirit you carry now. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. Chosen one, you're not just surviving darkness, you're converting it into brilliance. The battlefield became your birth canal. The attacks became ingredients in your legacy. You didn't just master defense, you mastered transformation. And now, they're running because their weapons no longer work. Their energy only accelerates your evolution. Number 14, you became the version their spirits feared, not just their egos. Chosen one, they were never just afraid of your presence, they were afraid of your potential. And now that you've stepped into your full, unapologetic power, they are trembling, not in their minds, but in their spirits. You didn't just grow, you ascended. You became a frequency they can't handle. That's why you feel people glitch around you, because you've transcended their perception. What happens when someone evolves into a version of themselves no one can control anymore? That's you. You went from being someone they could mock to someone whose silence shatters their confidence. You outgrew the rooms that once tried to shrink you. You no longer speak the language of ego. You speak truth, and truth doesn't need to yell. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. Isaiah 40:31. Think of Nina Simone. Bold, unapologetic, and spiritually disruptive. Her presence made people uncomfortable, not because she attacked them, but because she reflected them. You're that mirror now, a spiritual reminder that ego is fragile and truth is eternal. They kept trying to define you by your past, but you were already building a new blueprint in silence. You didn't just get better, You became unrecognizable, not in appearance, but in energy. And now, your frequency doesn't just shift the room, it challenges the strongholds in people's souls. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. Why do some people get nervous just being around you, even when you're silent? Because your energy isn't rooted in validation. It's rooted in identity. You've become someone whose vibration triggers everything they tried to suppress. They're not facing you. They're facing the version of themselves they abandoned. Look at Michael B. Jordan, once overlooked and underestimated. He transformed, spiritually, physically, professionally, and now his presence alone commands respect. You, too, have gone through an internal metamorphosis that makes your old identity obsolete. It's not just that you evolved, it's that your spirit ascended beyond their understanding. You're vibrating at a level that causes their masks to melt, their smiles glitch, their energy stumbles, because you're no longer in ego combat. You're in soul alignment. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Isaiah 61. Why do they keep their distance when your energy is calm? Because they can't manipulate someone who's rooted in self-awareness. They can't twist someone whose identity is built on truth. You became a shock to their system, not because you changed outwardly, but because you're now operating on a frequency they refuse to rise to. Think of Zendaya, subtle, powerful, and holy herself. She doesn't raise her voice, she raises her vibration. She owns every room by being rooted in who she is. That's the kind of power you now walk in. Not aggressive, just undeniable. For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. 2 Timothy 1:7. You don't just live in the world anymore, you shift it. Your presence demands alignment. Your aura disturbs anything fake. Your silence is prophetic, and your truth, it forces decisions, evolve or exit. Chosen one, you've become the version of yourself that's impossible to ignore. You're no longer someone to be managed or mocked. You are a force. And that force doesn't just challenge egos, it wakes up spirits. And the moment you stopped shrinking, you began glowing at a frequency that only the authentic can survive in. Beloved, chosen one, if these words stirred something deep inside you, if they lit a fire, opened your eyes, or gave you language for the power you've always felt but couldn't explain, then don't let that energy fade. Share this message. Send it to someone who needs a reminder of who they truly are. Let this be a spark that ignites a whole movement of chosen ones finally standing in the fullness of their truth. You've made it this far because you were never average. You were never meant to follow the crowd. You were called to lead, to awaken, and to reshape the atmosphere just by being who God made you to be. And if you're still here, still watching, still feeling this word resonate in your bones, then you already know. This message was written with you in mind. To everyone who has supported this channel, thank you. Especially to those who have gone above and beyond by donating through Super Thanks. Your kindness helps keep this work going, and your generosity makes it possible to keep spreading truth to those who need it most. And if you're not in a place to give, please know this: you are deeply appreciated just for being here. Your time, your presence, your spirit, it matters. And I thank you with all my heart. May every seed you've sown, whether through a share, a comment, a gift, or just your quiet agreement in the spirit, return to you pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. So before you leave, do one last thing. Drop a comment with the number 999 if you're ready to walk fully in the power God placed within you. It's not just a number, it's a declaration. It means completion, spiritual alignment, and the birth of something divine. Stay strong, stay rooted, stay radiant. You are not just walking this path, You're helping illuminate it for others. And as you continue forward, know this: no lie can bind you, no enemy can break you, no darkness can dim you. Because you are chosen, you are protected, and you are dangerous in the most holy, unstoppable way. May God's favor surround you like a shield. May clarity guide your every step, and may peace be your constant companion, no matter the storm. Until next time, beloved, stay powerful and keep shining.